read a second time, and I call the member for Herbert.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Australian Citizenship Amendment or Adoption Bill. This bill amends the Australian Citizenship Act of 2007. This bill will place children adopted by Australian citizens under bilateral arrangements in the same position as children adopted by Australian citizens under the Hague Convention arrangements. At least one adopted parent must be an Australian citizen at the time of adoption for the child to be eligible. At present, children adopted under bilateral arrangements require a passport from the home country and an Australian adoption visa to travel to Australia. This imposes additional complexity and cost on the adopting families. Under the amendments to be made by this bill, children will be able to be granted citizenship as soon as the adoption is finalised. They will then be able to travel to Australia and on an Australian passport with their new families as Australian citizens. The key feature of the bill is an amendment to Subdivision AA of Division 2 of Part 2 of the Act. The amendment simply expands the scope of the existing Hague Convention provisions so that they also cover adoptions in accordance with bilateral arrangements. The amendments made by the bill will apply to the benefit of all children adopted under bilateral arrangements, whether the adoption was finalised before or after these amendments come into force. Previously, Deputy Speaker, bilateral adoptions were required to be finalised through Australian courts, require the child to apply for a visa to travel to Australia. Recently, the Australian Government amended the Family Law Regulations 1998 to provide automatic recognition for adoptions in partner countries of Taiwan, South Korea, South Africa and previous adoptions from Ethiopia. Prime Minister Abbott himself has met with Adoption Awareness Week patron Deborah Lee Furness, and they have also been involved in meetings with National Adoption Awareness Week board members. In December last year, Deputy Speaker, Prime Minister Abbott announced he would improve overseas adoptions. In his second reading speech in this place on the 29th of May 2014, he said, "This bill is another step in delivering reform to intercountry adoptions. For too long, adoption has been in the too hard basket. For too long, it has been too hard to adopt, and for too long, this has been a policy no-go zone. It should not be that way, because adoption is all about giving children a better life." End quote. He has hit the nail on the head. The number of adoptions shows a substantial long-term decline from 32% in 2003-2004 and 77% since 1988-89. In financial year 2012-13, Australians adopted more children from non-Hague Convention countries like Ethiopia, South Korea and Taiwan than they did from Hague Convention countries. 40% of Australian adoptions occur from Taiwan and South Korea. We have announced improvements to the process for families adopting from Taiwan and South Korea. Children adopted from the Hague Convention countries which issue adoption compliance certificates are already able to obtain Australian citizenship as soon as the adoption is finalised. This has been the case since the enactment of the Australian Citizenship Act of 2007. As the process for children adoption under bilateral arrangements, including automatic recognition under Australian law, is in substance identical, there is no reason why those children should be treated differently in the Australian Citizenship Act. The government wants to make it easier to adopt when it is in the best interest of the child. And I think at the heart of everything here we should always remember that this is about people. It is red tape that impacts on children who legitimately need a safe and loving home, and Australians who dream of providing that home. We want to remove the red tape and reduce the delays that don't benefit anyone. COAG, the Council of Australian Governments, has also agreed in principle to the new National Overseas Adoption Service from 2015, and the Minister for Immigration is developing options to reduce waiting times for visas for adopting children from overseas. Where a non-convention country meets these standards, there is no reason why adoptions should not be recognised in the same way as adoptions from convention countries. Deputy Speaker, what I'm about to say here is not strictly to do with the legislation, but I'll tie it up at the end to make my central point on this bill. My wife always says you have to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. I have the three best children on the face of this planet. Well, most of the time anyway. So I know the joy of celebrating a pregnancy, the preparations for birth, the delivery and everything that comes after that. To watch your child go from being a baby in arms to a grown adult who disagrees with you in every way is an amazing journey. So I recognise the joy and absolute luck I have had with my 3 children over my 2 marriages. My wife Linda, and I use the term current wife, has told me that she never expected to be able to have children. We spoke about it, and Linda said she would never do IVF or the like. This was a personal decision by her, and it was guided by her faith. I simply agreed with her. We did, however, discuss adoption and foster parenting. It was a very live option for us until Linda discovered that she was pregnant. Andrew came along and joined Emma and Abby in our family. So while I have no direct involvement in this issue from a personal perspective, it is something that which we have discussed in our family. I have a mate and a sister who are adopted children. Clifford Kern, or CK to the people who listen to 106.3 Breakfast Radio in Townsville, is how he is better known. Their adopted parents were upfront with them all the way through their lives, and they're a beautiful family. CK recently met his birth father, and he is working through that relationship. It is something he is doing with a smile on his face and love and understanding in his heart. I have a mate in Townsville, Wayne Nico Nicholson, who is an adopted father. He and wife Margaret, or to use her title, the long-suffering Margaret Nicholson, have an adopted son, Mitch. Mitch and CK are mates who greet each other with a hug and tell each other that they are brothers from a different mother. Both these men and their roles in their adoption process are to be applauded. Nico and Margaret will tell that that adoption made their family whole. It completed them. They were able to provide for Mitch and give him an upbringing of privilege. Nico will tell you that adoption, when done right, is a brilliant thing. It is something which is not easy. The paperwork is onerous and invasive. In some ways, Nico is anti the paperwork but acknowledges the risk the authorities are taking with someone else's life. Deputy Speaker, there were some 130 intercountry adoptions. There were some 130 intercountry adoptions in 2012-13. There's 130 young lives on which some administrator is making a life-changing decision. We have to take care to apply the same rules which apply to CK and Nico and Margaret. We have to ensure that the adopted parents are doing this for the right reasons, that they will love this baby as their own, that they will understand what they are doing and the reasons why. The child must always come first, and I think this is what this legislation is all about. While I want the system to work for the best result, I don't want layers of bureaucracy killing it for prospective parents. We here need to ensure that our duty of care is observed here. I support this legislation. I support adoption and the people who make this massive decision to take another person and share their lives. Just like CK, Mitch, Nico and Margaret, there are decisions made and accepted. Those decisions must be for the right motivation, and the love of a lifetime together will follow. I thank the House.
And I